Good news and bad news, girls.
What?
The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
Hello, my name isn't important. I'm 16 and I live in the UK. I am meant to be in year 12, lower 6, doing my A levels, but for unrelated medical reasons, I haven't been in for the last 6 months. My dad owns his own company. He goes to different houses every day before they are put on the market to take photos, do energy performance certificates, I'll be referring to those as EPCs, and also floor plans. As I've been out of school, I didn't really like being alone at home and trying my hardest to get out and try to lessen my anxiety, so I usually go to work with my dad. If the house is empty, he gets given the keys and I can go inside with him. It's pretty cool. Sometimes they leave things behind and we get to have some of the cool items we find. If the house still has people inside, I will wait in his car and play on my phone and listen to the radio. You're probably wondering why I'm posting this. Well, of course, me and my dad have a lot of strange and scary stories of things we found or people we've come across. We go to quite a lot of old and sketchy towns because, all houses need selling. I'm not talking about finding a whole weed growth or a drug bust, though we have seen plenty. We just choose to ignore it, that's not our job. But we find some scary things. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of useless stories, but I have got a few interesting ones. Okay, so we're in this super sketchy neighborhood, and we have a job with keys to do an EPC. I helped carry some of the equipment to the house, and even from the outside, it looked gross. There were overgrown weeds and about 50 beer cans on the floor, as well as a bag of rotting and decomposing food. The smell was horrible, so we just wanted to get it over with. One of the windows was boarded up from the outside with the words, "Listen to us next time," spray painted on the outside of the house. Anyway, we go inside to the hallway, and the walls have scratch marks and holes in them. The floorboards are squeaky, all the carpets had been ripped up, and there was mold on most of the ceiling. We went into the kitchen first because that's where we usually start. There was broken glass everywhere, and shit. A lot of shit. I don't know if it was human or what, but there it was. So with our noses covered, we did what we needed to do. The rest of the bottom floor was all kind of the same as the hallway, moldy and scratched up walls. Maybe they had a dog. That would explain the shit, right? We go upstairs because we're kind of just rushing to get out at this point, and we find a closet door wide open, with a bunch of torn up letters inside. They looked handwritten. It was Russian, I think. There were 2 bedrooms. The first was kind of normal. No carpet and really plain. This place was a bit gross, and whilst my dad was taking the details he needed, I decided to go into the room next to it, the second bedroom. The walls were pastel pink and had butterfly stickers peeling off them. It made me smile a bit. I don't know, it was kind of a contrast, I guessed. These walls weren't scratched, but there was a big hole in one of them. It looked like a sledgehammer had hit it. I walked over to get closer, and I tripped over a bit of floorboard. I swore to myself a bit, but when I turned around to see what I tripped up, I saw the floorboard was loose. I pulled it back just because I was interested. Fucking hell, I wish I didn't. I found a small box inside, so I opened it. Like I said before, we get to keep anything cool we find, so I wasn't really worried. But when I opened it, there was a picture of a little girl. It looked like an old passport photo. A small hair bow, a few children's teeth, nothing menacing, just something a mother would keep when their children's teeth fall out, and a curl of blonde hair. There were 2 other things that made me want to throw up, though. The first was a letter, the same handwriting as before, but much messier. It just said, "I'm sorry, baby girl," and "I love you," over and over in red ink. The next, it was a small kitchen knife. The police came quick, let's say. Apparently, the house had been empty for about 10 years, which explained the mold. It also explained that this little girl had been missing for 10 years too. And the missing girl explains the note. Turns out, the red ink was blood. I've seen a lot of strange shit on the job, but this was one of the worst. The good news is, my discovery was a good thing. The girl was not dead. She'd just been abused. She's now 18 with a very happy family, and I'm going to get to meet her next week. My story is a long one, so I'm putting all these shorter ones together. The first happened a few years back. My younger sister and I were sitting on our back patio listening to music and relaxing, while my parents were at the other end of the house in the garage. In the middle of our house is a long hallway with the laundry room. I should add now, I personally believe each encounter I'm about to share has something to do with my grandfather, who passed away 5 years ago. While outside, I would make frequent trips into the house to grab something to drink or snack on, and I never saw my parents come inside the house, or anywhere near the laundry room. It was around 10 at night, and we came inside to get ready for bed, and I made a trip into the laundry room to grab my clothes that had finished drying. Pooled on top of the washing machine, dripping down the front of it, was blue soap. I thought nothing of it, just that the soap container had fallen and spilled. Except then I noticed the position in which the container was sitting, upright, on top of the laundry machine, next to the spot the soap was pooling. I picked up the container and went to set it back on the wooden shelf where it stays, and noticed there was soap on the shelf as well. It looked as though someone had intentionally grabbed the soap container, poured it onto the shelf, and then on top of the washing machine, then set the container down standing upright on top of the machine. The next thing happened almost a year ago, on my 19th birthday. The night before the official day was a full moon and my sun sign Sagittarius. I'd wanted to spend it outside under the moonlight, and while doing so I couldn't help but think about my grandfather and the experience my Aunt Amanda said she had regarding his ghost. I'm not going to try and recite her story word for word because it isn't mine, and I didn't see it for myself, but she did mention my grandfather going outside and pointing at the sky after having looked into the telescope we kept close to the back door. After some reflection on her story, I chanced to look up at the sky, and at that moment saw a shooting star. Nothing paranormal, granted, and this story might not have any paranormal elements at all, but I'll leave that up for you to decide. Personally, I have no explanation for why that happened. After the shooting star, I began to make my way inside as it was around midnight. Just then, I began to hear what sounded like cheerful fair music. And this is the bit I can't explain. I live in the countryside. My home is completely surrounded by thick forest, and the direction in which the sound was coming from was a particularly dense portion of forest, the only thing on the other side being the home of an old farmer. I walked closer to the sound, but it didn't fade away or get louder. It went on for about 3 minutes, and then stopped abruptly. I should add my birthday is considerably close to Christmas, which could potentially explain the cheerful music, but it doesn't explain the odd time and placing. My final experience I have to share so far is something that happened about a month ago. It was around 8 in the evening, and I was sitting on my couch reading while the TV played in the background. The remote was sitting next to me on the other cushion, not being touched, and suddenly the TV went black as it changed channels. I looked at the remote, which was still untouched on the cushion next to me, and in plain sight. I watched as the TV switched to a channel that plays music, and thought maybe one of my family members was trying to frighten me. So I turned around and looked behind the couch. I peeked into the hallway. I called out for them, but there was absolutely no one there. My sister came from outside of her room asking what I needed while we both watched as my parents came inside from the garage. I thought it best not to mention this to anyone, but as I sat back down and grabbed the remote to try and switch it back to the original channel I was watching, I became intrigued. I'd wanted to hear what the music was, so I pressed the volume button to turn it up. The volume raised about 2 notches before the remote stopped working in my hand. I just stared at the TV in confusion as the volume bar began decreasing. Remote in my hand, no buttons being pressed. TV in front of me, no one manually pressing buttons, all family members accounted for. My sister took notice of what was going on, and the volume finally decreased to 0. Once again, I began to try my luck with the remote, to turn the volume up or switch the channel, and still it wasn't working. The remote wasn't dead, as we soon found out. About 5 minutes later, it began working again as if nothing had ever happened. Everyone was a bit unsettled, so we didn't speak further on the matter and just went to bed soon after. A week ago, curiosity got the better of me, and I scrolled through our TV guide to track down the music channel. I found it, had a listen, and was further amazed when my grandmother heard the music and stated that it was exactly what my grandfather loved to listen to when he was alive.